Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Ephraim Graham. The search for a missing Malaysian plane appears to be widening once again as searchers pursue a new lead. U.S. investigators now suspect the flight stayed in the air for an extra 4 hours after it reached its last confirmed location. Our Heather Sells has the latest.
Investigators now believe that the missing Malaysian plane may have flown for 5 hours. That's 4 more than they first thought. The Wall Street Journal reports the clue is based on data automatically transmitted from the Boeing's engines. This latest lead raises all kinds of new questions about who and why someone on board may have diverted the plane. And it expands the search area again. If the plane kept running for an extra 4 hours after last making contact, that's an extra 2,200 nautical miles. But Malaysia's acting defense minister denies that the engine data shows an extra 4 hours of flight.
I fear that the search and rescue becomes just a search, but we will never give up hope.
Authorities have been searching for 6 days now with nothing to show. Today, planes checked out an area where Chinese satellite images showed possible debris, but they found nothing. Malaysian authorities are facing tough questions for their handling of the investigation. At times, they've issued conflicting and confusing statements. For families of the missing passengers, the wait is excruciating.
There is no news whatsoever. It's just disappeared off the face of the earth. And if we could just find some wreckage or something, would be a help, probably, but not this.
American experts from the National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Aviation Administration have now joined the investigation after being shut out for days. So far, authorities have not ruled out any possible cause. That includes mechanical failure, pilot error, sabotage, and terrorism. Heather Sells, CBN News.
The U.S. Senate is moving forward with legislation giving President Obama power to sanction Russia for the invasion of Crimea. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee approved the bill Wednesday. In a meeting with Ukraine's Prime Minister, President Obama said the U.S. stands with the people of Ukraine. The proposed legislation allows the Obama administration to impose economic sanctions on Russian officials for their part in the invasion. It also authorizes $1 billion in loan guarantees to Ukraine's new government. Rocket fire continued today against Israeli cities. Terrorists began unleashing a massive rocket barrage on southern Israel Wednesday night as the British Prime Minister was in Israel talking about peace. CBN News correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
Islamic Jihad terrorists, backed by Iran, launched dozens of rockets from the heart of Gaza on Wednesday. It marked the biggest spike in Gaza rocket fire since 2012. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel wouldn't tolerate terror from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip.
If there's no calm in the south, there'll be no calm in Gaza, and that's an understatement. I call upon the residents of the south to follow the instructions. The IDF will do its job.
The Israeli Air Force struck nearly 30 terror sites in retaliation for the barrage. The IDF said it targeted infrastructure terrorists use for training, planning, and carrying out attacks. More than 60 rockets fell inside Israel, including at least 5 that exploded in populated areas but caused no injuries. Several rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome anti-rocket system. Islamic Jihad, which is armed by Iran, claimed it fired the rockets in retaliation for the deaths of 3 of its members, killed earlier this week in an Israeli airstrike. The IDF released this video. It says clearly shows those 3 terrorists launching a mortar shell at Israeli soldiers and running from the site. Visiting British Prime Minister David Cameron says his country stands with Israel on security matters.
Let me be absolutely clear about these attacks from Gaza. We condemn them completely. They are a reminder, once again, of the importance of maintaining and securing Israel's future and the security threats that you face. And you have Britain's support in facing those security threats.
Cameron is here on a 30-hour visit in part to promote the U.S.-sponsored Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Netanyahu said there can only be genuine peace if Iranian-backed terrorists can't fire rockets at Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
At least 6 people are now confirmed to have been killed in the explosion that flattened 2 New York City apartment buildings. Firefighters recovered the bodies of a man and a woman this morning. A gas leak triggered the blast Wednesday morning on Park Avenue and 116th Street. That's in East Harlem. The incident injured more than 60 people and destroyed a storefront church that has been around for 80 years. Investigators say people had complained of gas odors in the weeks before the blast.
We'll be looking at Con Ed's call logs to see when the first calls started coming in to report such. That will definitely be part of our investigation.
A more than century-old cast iron pipeline supplied gas to the buildings. The latest snowstorm is wreaking havoc across the Midwest and Northeast, and many are hoping this will be winter's last blast. In Ohio, pileups involving at least 50 cars killed 3 people and seriously injured 1 state trooper Wednesday. The pileups on both sides of the Ohio Turnpike caused miles of backups and hours of delays. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of homes and businesses in northern Illinois and Indiana lost power. Chicago got about 6 inches of snow, making this Chicago's 3rd snowiest winter, only 1 week away from spring. The storm has been heading east to New England. Some places could see their heaviest snowfalls of the winter before the storm dissipates over Canada. Catholic groups in Oklahoma have filed a new class action lawsuit to block portions of Obamacare's contraception mandate. The Catholic Benefits Association is a group of nearly 200 Catholic employers. They want to stop the mandate forcing employers to provide health insurance coverage for birth control and abortion-inducing drugs. Catholic leaders say those practices violate their church's teaching. Catholic churches are already exempt from the mandate, but Catholic businesses are not exempt. The Obama administration has once again delayed a key part of Obamacare, and they did it secretly, without so much as even a news release. They had already delayed the individual mandate, the part of the law that forces all Americans to buy health insurance or face a fine. But now, the Wall Street Journal reports they've extended that delay by another 2 years until 2016. It applies to Americans whose plans were canceled because of Obamacare and who can only find Obamacare plans that are more expensive than the insurance they used to have. President Obama still vows to veto bipartisan bills that would delay Obamacare. President Obama also plans to boost overtime pay. His instructions to the Labor Department could affect millions of Americans, but critics say it could be yet another job killer. Our John Waggy explains.
Earlier this year, President Obama signed an executive order raising the minimum wage for some federal workers to more than $10 an hour. Now he may direct the Labor Department to force more employers to pay overtime for certain salaried workers. Critics say his policies are job restrictors, if not job killers, for American employers.
The way you help the poor most is through growth. What they need is jobs, not food stamps. What they need is an opportunity to get on that first rung of the economic ladder where their labor is not worth very much, and then climb that ladder through hard work and diligence and education.
But some economic analysts say some rungs on the ladder have been missing in recent years.
There are 700,000 fewer executive secretaries now than there were in 2007. Economists say that these mid-tier jobs have been hollowed out, and as a result, for those on the low end, it's pretty hard for them to climb up.
Richard Wilson started at Walmart stocking shelves. He's still doing that more than 2 years later and is waiting for a promised promotion.
Just found myself like many other Americans out here that did the right thing, that did what we were supposed to do, only to find out that the jobs that we were promising were not there, the career is not there.
But big companies have been struggling along with small ones, and the U.S. government isn't making things easier through more regulation.
We have about 140 million customers that shop in our stores each week, and if those people are getting more opportunities and are earning higher incomes and there's a vibrant middle class, that's going to lead to more disposable income in people's wallets and pocketbooks, and we'll get our fair share of that.
The president's class warfare arguments and regulations on business are popular with his political base, but a weak recovery may cause employers to pull back, and that could mean one more sign of trouble in November. John Waggy, CBN News.
And the world's largest retail association is criticizing President Obama's new push for changes in federal overtime pay. A spokesperson for the National Retail Federation says the president's proposal would kill jobs, and there's no evidence that the changes are necessary. He said, quote, "We are skeptical of the politics of the proposal and certainly of the timing. This is not an issue that has been percolating. It has been a matter of settled law for 10 years and seems to be working. We think this is politically motivated." Coming up, Persecuted, the must-see movie about an evangelist framed for murder after taking a stand for religious freedom. Iran is refusing medical treatment to an imprisoned American pastor. Pastor Saeed Abedini's health is deteriorating as a result of prison beatings. The American Center for Law and Justice reports more than a week ago, he was moved from his cell to a private hospital for treatment. Wednesday, doctors stopped the treatment. Pastor Saeed was shackled and ordered back to prison. For more on this and how you can join the millions calling for Pastor Saeed Abedini's release, you can visit our website, cbnnews.com. Controversy at the Air Force Academy after cadets were pressured to remove a Bible verse written on a hallway whiteboard. A cadet who holds a position of authority over others wrote Galatians 2:20 on the board outside his dorm room. It reads, "I've been crucified with Christ, therefore I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me." The director of Military Religious Freedom Foundation claims that amounted to an abuse of authority. The cadets later removed the verse. In Tennessee, a bill giving students free religious expression has passed the House. The bill would allow students to express their beliefs about religion in their school work. It would also allow them to organize prayer groups and religious gatherings, just as other outside students are permitted to form clubs and organize extracurricular activities. A federal trial is underway to determine whether a New Mexico City can have a Ten Commandments monument in front of City Hall. The American Civil Liberties Union says the monument violates the religious freedoms of residents in Bloomfield by putting out a message the city endorses a particular religious belief. The city's lawyers argue the monument was paid for and put up by private individuals under a city resolution. Bloomfield's policy provides equal access to any group that wants a monument at City Hall that's relevant to the history or heritage of the city. A new political thriller called Persecuted is coming to theaters this spring, where a member of Congress frames a nationally known evangelist for murder because he tries to block sweeping religious reform. And CBN's Wendy Griffith has a small part in the film. Director Daniel Lusko told her the frightening scenario is not as far-fetched as you might think. Wendy recently sat down with Lusko to talk about the film.
There are those who claim that your ministry is intolerant, that your crusades may even threaten the freedoms of others.
Freedom is fragile and costly and must constantly be defended.
Daniel, what inspired you to write Persecuted?
The Holy Spirit inspired me to write Persecuted. I woke up one morning and it was there. The government is trying to take control of everything, including the very source that gave our country its foundation, which is biblical truth.
I cannot water down the gospel to advance.
James Remar plays lead character, evangelist John Luther. We met on location during filming in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Tell me about John Luther.
John Luther is the hero of our story, and he becomes a major evangelist at the level of a Billy Graham at a time when America becomes an unwelcoming environment for the gospel. And he's discredited. He is tarnished. He's taken away from his family and his ministry, and eventually has to go on the run as a fugitive to prove the truth.
So, John, what is your opinion of the primary tenets of the Faith and Fairness Act?
Fox News anchor Gretchen Carlson and I both have roles in Persecuted. She as the news anchor who questions John Luther's motives, and myself as a legal expert who talks about Luther's checkered past.
And leaving the scene of an accident.
Talk about a relapse.
Well, you played a very powerful role, and I'll just say this: our own Wendy Griffith from the 700 Club is an important role in the movie, and again establishes the credibility of the case against John Luther.
Do you mind if we get a picture of my daughter?
So basically, you have a famous evangelist, John Luther, who is framed for murder by a member of Congress because he's standing in the way of the sweeping religious reform. Is this really fantasy, or is this something that you could actually envision happening in America?
It really is beginning because we allow ourselves to be silenced in the name of political correctness.
Why is Persecuted not your typical Christian film?
Well, we have an all-star cast in the film of Persecuted, and I think it's because we have an all-star story that has come in sync with the pulse that is happening across our country, and I think people are picking up on that regardless of what political view you come from. So I'd love for people to go and visit facebook.com/persecuted movie, because that's where we're going to be posting updates about the film, screening updates, tour updates, contests, everything leading up to the release.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
And Persecuted opens in theaters nationwide on May 9th. Also, look for Persecuted the novel in stores April 1st. Up next, to win the White House, you have to win the votes of people in this community. We'll show you where they are and which way they're leaning. So don't go away. President Obama is facing his lowest public approval rating yet. A new Wall Street Journal NBC News poll finds only 41% of Americans approve of how the president is doing his job. Some 54% disapprove. Meanwhile, those on the right aren't doing much better. 45% of Americans have a negative view of the Republican Party. Tuesday, a Republican candidate won a special election victory in the key swing state of Florida. Over the years, the GOP has had a lock on Cuban voters in that state, but now that could change. Our Heather Sells has the story.
More than 800,000 Cubans live in South Florida. You'll find them sipping small cups of strong coffee throughout the day and helping drive the local economy in upscale shopping and business districts. And in what's known as Little Havana, the older crowd flocks to Domino Park, rain or shine.
For years, the GOP has depended on Cubans in Miami as a reliable vote. But now, the younger generation doesn't appear to share the same party loyalty or political concerns.
The older, the exile community that came in '59 and in the 60s was more focused on a real single mission, which was getting back to Cuba.
Jose Fuentes' dad emigrated from Cuba, so he speaks personally about younger Cubans. As a government lobbyist, Fuentes also speaks professionally and says young Cubans born here bring a different set of values to the table.
We want to hear that you've got a good tax code that helps working families. We want to know that you're doing better things for education.
New polling shows a political divide among Cuban Americans, with the younger generation less concerned about Cuban policy and more motivated by domestic issues. It makes sense to Al Cardenas, chair of the American Conservative Union.
Cuban Americans, when we first came to America, said, look, Republicans are against communism, they're for liberty, they're for freedom, we're with them. Now, they like what Republicans stand for, but they're also looking closely at the individuals and what they stand for.
That may explain why in 2012, Joe Garcia became Florida's first Cuban-American Democrat elected to Congress, why a record number of Cuban voters turned out for President Obama, and why those like J.C. Dare feel more liberal than their Cuban-born parents.
I consider myself in the moderate world. Not, most Cuban Americans are a bit conservative, so on. I consider myself in the moderate.
Political watchers call it a subtle shift that is worth watching. Latin American expert and Regent Provost Paul Bonicelli believes that Republicans should be concerned.
The first shock for the GOP is they never had to worry about that, and now you have to. And it's not just worry like keep me up at night, it's now I got to spend more money in an area that was a lock.
Here's the political equation. Cubans are key to Florida's Hispanic vote. Florida's Hispanic vote is critical to winning the state, and the state leads to the White House. Florida's 29 electoral votes are the fourth most in the country and make it a major battleground state. In addition to their impact on voting, younger Cubans could ultimately affect U.S. policy towards Cuba.
I think the younger generation looks at the embargo as something that maybe hasn't functioned, maybe we should change it, maybe we should negotiate.
And they're like a lot of younger Americans. They don't really listen so much to their parents and grandparents and what they're talking about. They want to strike out on their own. They want to have a different point of view. And that explains a lot of the apathy toward the anti-Castro movement.
Part of that turnaround can be seen in this recent poll showing 64% in Miami want normal relations between the U.S. and Cuba. Maybe that's why this handshake with Raul Castro at Nelson Mandela's memorial didn't make more waves than it would have in the past. For now, the Cuban vote remains one in transition, representing a newfound opportunity for Democrats and a new concern for the GOP. Reporting in Miami, Heather Sells, CBN News.
And finally this hour, a couple from Washington State had always wanted to be parents, but after 10 years, the DeVores were trying to accept this wouldn't happen. Then they heard about Snowflakes, a unique agency that takes frozen embryos created by couples for their own in vitro fertilization. The agency then matches those snowflake embryos with a new couple. The DeVores adopted an embryo, a little girl they named CJ.
Right away, she held on to Matt's finger.
Just tell her everything. You know, she may not understand it all, but so that she grows up with it, so it's never a shock or something that it's a secret.
There are hundreds of thousands of frozen embryos in storage banks in the U.S. While most embryo donations are anonymous, Snowflakes encourages open communication between the families. Well, that is going to do it for CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a great day, everybody.